had a brief spell in the Air Force at the time. There was military service, so I was there for just over a year.
Did you fly planes?
I was in the Air Force. Never allowed me to fly a plane. I liked wine too much.
Welcome to the Lush Life podcast. I'm your drinking companion, Susan Schwartz, and I bring you the how-to guide for living life one cocktail at a time. Thanks to my mother's love of martinis, the first words I spoke were shaken, not stirred, and I've been obsessed by cocktails ever since. Together, we'll learn from bartenders, brand ambassadors, distillers, and others why certain drinks are popular in certain cultures, how to make the perfect old-fashioned, when to shake and when to stir, and so much more. Hear that sound? It's time to cozy up to the bar and let the fun begin. His first job, and he was set for life. Our guest today, Gino Nardella, Master Sommelier for the Stafford, London, never had to go anywhere else. Today we find out why he stayed for so very long. Trust me, if you've ever been to the Stafford, you would know why.
Well, I was born in South Italy, in Puglia, and my involvement in the wine business started very early in life, really. The family had vineyards, and therefore I started in the vineyards. Not that I enjoyed, working in the vineyards. Never imagined that later on, they will be my profession.
Were they winemakers?
They were not winemaker, but they had vineyards, and they used to sell the grapes, to the local cave cooperative. So
was that their business, your family?
It was not actually. My dad was a policeman, but my mum had a sister. They were farmers, and whether we liked it or not, we had to go and help.
Did you ever want to be a policeman?
No. That was never my intention, to be a policeman. But at the same time, I never enjoyed actually the call of help, from my aunt, to go and help in the vineyards. That's not what I wanted to do at the time. I was a teenager and I had other things in my mind, really.
Of course, what child really wants to go cut grapes,
really? Absolutely.
You want to play.
Yes. But later on, I went to the catering college and where I did management. And
was this still in Italy?
Still in Italy. And I started drinking and enjoying wine. And
Wait, you're going way too fast.
Yes.
Now, catering college.
Yes, indeed.
How come you wanted to go to catering college?
I don't know. I thought that was exciting, learn foreign languages, and so I decided not to enroll. And
did you want to be a cook?
No, not at all.
No.
I did management. Yes,
mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you were drawn to hospitality.
Hospitality, yes.
Originally,
that's what I did. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, how old were you when you were at catering college?
Well, I went at the age of after I finished middle school at the age of 15.
Oh boy!
Yes.
Uh-huh. And so, what languages did you want to learn?
Well, at college I learned English, French, and German.
Were you thinking then, I want to travel with these languages?
Indeed, that's what I wanted to do. Yes,
uh-huh.
Yes. It was very exciting, to be able to say a few words at the beginning and then, have a conversation in a different language. So it was very exciting. Yes, that's what I wanted to do. Yes.
And so did you love catering college when you were there?
I did actually. I enjoyed my experience there, and there were happy times, really. Yes.
So what led you? So when you graduated there, with the whole world out there, where were you thinking you would end up?
I had a brief spell in the Air Force at the time. There was military service, so I was there for just over a year.
Did you fly planes?
I was in the Air Force. Never allowed me to fly a plane. I liked wine too much. I don't think it was safe, for me to fly anything really. But enjoy that, and then decided that it was time for me to leave the country, and applied actually to go to Paris and London. And the first call came from London, and that's why 40 years later I'm still in London. Yes.
And was it for here at the Stafford?
I was offered actually a job here at the Stafford, believe it or not. Yes.
That's crazy.
As
what
a
were you
trainee
doing?
manager. Yeah.
And so what did you do as a trainee manager?
Well, I started here, and my first they put me in the restaurant, to start with, and I was very fortunate to meet Keith Dougherty, the then master sommelier of the Stafford. And the rest is history, really. Yes.
Did you think I want to do that?
Well, he was an amazing person, fascinating, his knowledge, and I loved wine, so I was infected.
Were your parents like, oh my goodness, he's
not at all, not at all. I had very modern thinking parents where they allowed the children to do whatever they wanted, in the sense that very little intervention. As far as we didn't stray, too much, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all that wine drinking in the early years did good.
Oh, absolutely. Besides, I was born in Italy, and wine, the bottled wine was always on the table. In fact, my dad wouldn't start a meal if the water bottle or the wine bottle and bread was missing from the table.
He wouldn't even eat?
He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't start. So we knew that something was... one of these three items, actually, were missing.
Uh-huh.
So...
I love that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So we always, even when I was very young, I was always allowed, to have a little drop. When I was very young, my dad would allow me to actually dip my finger, in his wine glass so I could taste it. And later on, he would leave me a little drop that unfortunately never reached my throat. But nevertheless, it was so delicious, yes.
And what wines did your family make? Or what grapes were there?
Well, we grew a lot of Nero di Troia in particular, yes, and Trebbiano, yes. Mm-hmm. So white and red.
When you found that you wanted to be a sommelier, was he very welcoming to that idea?
Oh, absolutely. It was very encouraging, and he helped me. He said, you love wine. He said, that's what you should be doing, and that's what I did. I followed his advice.
So I guess, what are the steps to becoming sommelier, at least here at the Stafford?
Well, at the Stafford, we had, a tradition here at the Stafford. We only had the three-head sommelier since the 50s, and therefore there is this tradition here, to have always someone very knowledgeable, to run these extensive wine cellars. And Keith, he wasn't a selfish person. He shared all his knowledge with me and encouraged me, to study and find out more.
How long have he been here?
Keith started here in 1972 and left in 1984. And it is in 1984 when I actually took over the running of the Stafford wine cellars. Mm. But I graduated, if I may say graduated. I passed my master sommelier diploma in 1981. So I was fairly young at the time, for a master sommelier, yes.
And so tell us about the Stafford collection. Well, what has kept you here all these years? You guys all stay here for a long time.
First of all, it is a very beautiful hotel and very boutique, we have an amazing clientele. But above all, we have an amazing toy, the wine cellars, that few hotels in the world actually have Burgundian wine cellars like the Stafford, huge cellars, 320 years old. Full of some amazing wine, so that's a toy that very few sommeliers actually around the world can boast. Yes.
Well, the Stafford hasn't been here for that long.
No.
So how did they happen upon these wine cellars?
Well, the wine cellars originally were not built for the Stafford, as the Stafford is just 115 years old. These cellars were inherited by the Stafford just over 100 years ago, but originally they were built for a very wealthy family. The Godolphin, who lived here in the 16th centuries. But the reason why they survived exactly the way they were built is because they are in the right place in London, as if 100 years, 200, 300 years ago, wine was enjoyed by the wealthy people only. The rest of the country didn't drink wine at all. We have to wait until the late 60s, 1960s, 1970s, when the rest of the population started, enjoying wine. But prior to that, only wealthy people enjoyed fine claret, Burgundy, and fine Riesling. And this was right in the heart of London, very close to the royal palaces. There were the people that lived there that enjoyed wine, and therefore the need for fine wine cellars.
So there has been wine here continuously?
Absolutely, for 330 years, 330 years. So
when the Stafford came, when the Stafford was built here, what wines were left here?
Well, I personally don't know. Not many bottles, I believe, because in those days, bottling was still done in our wine cellars.
Oh, boy.
They would actually import, barrels of claret or Burgundies and actually do the bottling here. As you can see, the cellars are full of utensils from the days when bottling was done with the corking machine, filters and other things.
So when you got here, I assume that the clients of the Stafford and the restaurants have changed their taste over the years.
Yes, very conservative until the late 70s.
But what does conservative mean?
Conservative meaning that red was Bordeaux and Burgundy white was Burgundy, white Burgundy, and
so
and
French,
Riesling.
French,
and Riesling
right.
from Germany.
Was so French and
very
German.
Popular. Absolutely, yes. But then again, I mean, this was just the beginning of the late 70s when London was changing, when people discovered good eating and good drinking. Yes, and the Stafford, we were very avant-garde of the Stafford. In fact, in the mid-70s, we introduced South African wine, Australian wine, Californian wines already. So,
and how about Italian?
And Italians, there were some Italians here, but if I can recall, not of very high qualities. I think that for the Italian wine, really to find a place in our cellars, the right place in our cellars, we had to wait another most probably 10, 15 years, yes.
Were you their champion?
Well, not necessarily. I didn't think that at the time Italy actually made outstanding wines. They were making wine for the local palate, following, the ancient or the granddad recipe, which was not necessarily the right recipe for the particular varietals,
So where do you see it going now?
I think London is very exciting, first of all, because there are no other, most probably, city in the world where we're exposed to so many wines and so much good food. So there's been a revolution in the last 40, 45 years in London, because London was what it is today, yes. There were no fine restaurant, no fine dining, and no fine drinking. I mean, having a glass of wine in a pub, was very dangerous. You risked your palate for the next 2 or 3 weeks, yes. There wasn't the wine culture, did not exist.
Obviously, it's changed from the French and Germans to the New World wines. Do you see a future where, they're growing wine, they're making wine all over the world, right?
Indeed,
Pretty much now.
Yes.
Do you see a place where you're not expecting wine to come from that might make wines that you may have here in the future? Do you think now everyone is making wine and it just gets better and better?
It's already happening, really. There are very few countries nowadays that don't have vineyards. I mean, vines are very sturdy plants, and therefore they'll grow very successfully all over the world, with very few exceptions, most probably in the desert and in the polar regions. We have seen, who thought that, China would have, amazing vineyards and start making, amazing wines. And here we go. Now we have China coming very strong onto the market, India, and so many other countries. We go with the Eastern European country, for instance, where investment is going into the vineyards, into the wine cellars, and very shortly we will see actually some great wines, coming from those countries.
How long do you think it'll take before we see them?
I think that, most probably in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we will start talking about those countries that I just mentioned, as we are talking most probably about most of the European countries, like we talk about Portugal, Spain, Italy, and so on. And the revolution is still going on. Not necessarily new countries coming onto the market, but also the old world. I mean, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece, we see things actually moving on continuously. Very exciting, extremely exciting at the moment, yes.
So what has been the most exciting one that you've tasted?
Well, for me,
in recent times?
Well, not necessarily recently, but I remember when for the first time, actually, I've tasted the New World wine, like California, Australian wines, and South American wine, where such was the intensity of the varietals that we had to readjust our palate. For instance, for Cabernet Sauvignon, if I can mention, a Cabernet Sauvignon from Coonawarra in the mid-70s. For us until then, Cabernet Sauvignon was Bordeaux, and trying, Cabernet Sauvignon from the New World at the time was a completely new experience. We had to readjust actually our tasting buds.
And
it took us a little time. Yes.
Did you work with the chefs? I guess and please tell me how it works, is that you tried this new wine, which you were like, oh my God, this is incredible. Do you then go to the chef and say, look, there's this wine, we need to match it with something? I mean, is that how it works?
Well, I mean, we always have a discussion, especially when we change the menus, and we still do now. The chef will change the menu in September, the chef again will change it again in the spring or in the summer, in order to use, the fresh produce. We always have a discussion. We see what he has in mind, the dishes, and we act accordingly. Not that we can reshape the entire wine cellars, every time, we change the menus, but we do like to introduce new things every time, exciting things. It's wonderful. Yes, we do work together, indeed. Yes.
Well, I want to try some of that. Can we go up and try?
Oh, absolutely. Let's go to the bar and have a glass of wine. Yes.
All right. Great, thanks.
You might have thought that since we were talking wine, that we wouldn't have a cocktail of the week. That would just be silly. This cocktail is called the White Mouse, and it has a history all of its own, which you can read about on lushlifemanual.com. Start with a shaker and pour in 30 ml of saffron gin. Then add 15 ml of lemon juice and 15 ml of honey. Then add your ice. Shake all the ingredients together, then double strain into a coupe or cocktail glass, and top up with champagne. Garnish with star anise to float. There you have the White Mouse, dedicated to Nancy Wake, the World War II spy who lived at the Stafford until her death. Read all about her, the Stafford, and all the recipes you hear on the podcast at lushlifemanual.com, where you'll also find all the ingredients in our shop. Thanks to Gino for letting me into the Stafford's 320-year-old wine cellar, and for treating me to a few sips of his favorites. Next time on a Lush Life podcast, we have another Italian, Danilo Tersini, General Manager of Mr. Fogg's and founder of Seven Hills Gin, who also couldn't wait to travel. It might have taken him a while to get to London, but now it's his home. Until next time, bottoms up. Thanks for listening to the Lush Life podcast, the sister of A Lush Life Manual. For more information and links to everything you heard, plus a bit more, please visit alushlifemanual.com. Always remember the wise words of Oscar Wilde. All things in moderation, including moderation. And always drink responsibly. Okay, I said that last part. Theme music is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. Lush Life is produced by Terra, and I'm your hostess, Susan Schwartz. I'll see you at the bar.